Welcome to a special edition of the pod today. We're joined here by my friend and partner, Jeff Nussbaum, who leads executive communications for BPI. Jeff, thanks for joining.
Great to be with you.
We're here because this whole week has been blown up by a conversation around, God forbid, an AI-driven op-ed in a traditional non-AI-driven newspaper, the Wall Street Journal, and in particular, one by Stanley Druckenmiller, right, the famed billionaire investor. First, Jeff, can you tell us a little bit what happened?
Yeah, first of all, it's funny, we are discussing kind of new technology, bringing an old medium back to life. But as you mentioned, Stanley Druckenmiller, the billionaire investor on Monday, wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal where he really took Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent to task for sort of trying to price manage yields on Treasury bonds. And this, of course, is very newsworthy because Druckenmiller was a mentor of Bessent. And so it became this, for a brief moment, a very newsworthy political economic op-ed. And then shortly thereafter, a day later, it became very newsworthy for another reason.
Right. Together, these guys took down the British pound, right? That's what they're famous for. Now he's criticizing Bessent for trying to prop it up.
Exactly. It's right. It's a real palace intrigue story. But then Tuesday morning, an economist posted a pangram test on X, which revealed that 100% of this text is AI. And now all of a sudden we have this totally different story. And reporters start chasing this story, which is, billionaire Stanley Druckenmiller's Wall Street Journal op-ed criticizing Bessent was written with AI. And Druckenmiller doesn't sort of really try to deny or hedge or explain away. He says, absolutely, I used AI. It's a tool like the same way I would use a calculator if I was doing a math problem. And so the reveal plus the unapologetic nature set off a bit of a firestorm, as we were discussing earlier.
Yeah. And how did the Wall Street Journal react? Did they like this?
They were sort of stuck with it. And so I think Paul Gigot, the editor, basically said, yeah, we recognize that this is the way of the world. As he said, I'm quoting, AI is a fact of modern life. People will use it to assist in their work and their writing, including their research, checking grammar, editing, and more. And
but that's a change, right? They've been pretty conservative.
It is a huge change. And in that, so first of all, they, then they sort of try to explain it that we know who Druckenmiller is. We know that this thinking represents him. But people rightly see this as a sea change because the Wall Street Journal's reaction is very, very different from a response earlier this month when a Harvard professor had a piece in the Financial Times and it was found that he used AI to help it. And if you go and look at that piece in the Financial Times, there is still like a bold text header on top of the article that says, it has come to our attention that AI was used to condense a longer draft of this column prior to submission to the FT and our own editorial involvement. The FT editorial code of conduct specifically prohibits the use of AI in the writing process. So in the space of a month, we've gone from one paper of record saying this is not something that we accept, condone, or should ever be done, to the Wall Street Journal saying, all right, it's a fact of life. It's here, and we're okay with it.
Well, this is happening in our own world with our clients, right? We had a few months ago, we had contracts, even with some of the big tech companies that said, you cannot use AI for our work. And then literally days later, the teams were asking, tell us how you're using AI for our work. And we had to say, well, your contract prohibits it. And obviously everything got flipped so fast.
Yeah, and now we're seeing that in the world of content and executive communications.
Totally. Well, tell us about the op-ed, the substance. Was it any good?
Well, so that's the real question is, was it good? And the answer is yes and no. It is, for those who know Druckenmiller, read his work, listen to him, it sounds like him. And so in that sense, it is. And it makes an argument. And the argument is sort of clear. And that's where the no comes in. Because the question is, did the tools help him make the argument he was trying to make as effectively as he could make it? And there, with my non-economic expert, but sort of writing expert opinion, I would say no. Like, it could have absolutely been better. It could have been sharper. And it had some of those very AI kind of cringy sentences where it kind of sounds nice on first reading, and when you pull the thread, the logic doesn't quite exist behind it. So it probably would have benefited a little bit more from a little more human in the loop, as we say these days.
Well, my concern too is it feels like the medium overshadowed the message here. The data that I saw was that 9 of 10 major articles about this led with AI, right? And it was the use of AI that drove the narrative, and I think the message got really obscured.
Absolutely. I mean, my network, our communicators network blew up again, right, about the medium, about what this meant. And I bet if you asked most of them, what did the op-ed say? Did you read it? They could not tell you this is about, T-bill yields.
Well, look, that'll change over time. It is going to be more normalized, clearly. So, what does this mean for executive communications? Because you're sort of famously very quiet about your work. You're sort of a traditional, in a good way, speechwriter, ghostwriter, very, very private because it's, the clients that speak for themselves, right? But you're often in this role. What does that mean for executive communication?
You just raised that, and I hadn't really thought about that before, but so much of my job and our team's job, we sit behind the curtain the same way probably AI should sit behind the curtain. You want the ideas and the author to come forward. And so in one sense, the fact that the AI became the story is not necessarily a good thing for the story. But I'm asked this all the time now, right? Like I think I joked in a meeting when this story came up, I said, I'll see myself out, right? It can be done with AI. But the truth is it can't quite. And so what does it mean for executive communications? Really two things. One is that AI is a remarkable, staggering synthesis engine. It can just grind through huge amounts of information and data, and you can use it to unearth facts and insights that a single person or team of people couldn't do in a million years. And so I often tell people, in terms of executive communications, it allows us with good queries and good thoughtfulness to unearth new insights that help the leaders we work with be more insightful. For example, normally, right, 5 years ago in a speech or op-ed or LinkedIn post, executives say, like, I'm hearing a lot of talk about quantum, right? Now you can use an AI engine to say, tell me every time quantum was mentioned in an earnings call in a Fortune 500, for a Fortune 500 company over the last 5 years. And all of a sudden, it's not, I heard about quantum. You have real data that makes a real point. So the synthesis engine is amazing. However, when it comes to writing, sometimes the thing that sticks is the most unsynthesized. It's sort of raw and spiky and unexpected, like those turns of phrase. I think in history, like a day that will live in infamy, axis of evil. Like I don't know that AI is going to come up with those. And so I think often about political speeches, right? And a politician. The example that always comes to mind is like Hillary Clinton in 2008 had a convention speech where she basically had a speech where she said, like, I heard from a soldier who told me this, and I heard from a minimum wage worker who told me that. And then I heard from a woman who was undergoing cancer treatment, and she had my name painted on her bald head. And it sort of felt like two truths or two lies and a truth, right? Like the AI can give you the first two, but only like the human experience and the kind of spiky, unexpected language can give you the third. And that's the memorable piece. So I think that the important thing is AI can advance thought, but it can't be a substitute for thought. And then, the second thing I often say is it can help find a voice or use a voice if someone has a real clear history of voice, but it can't give that voice. So that well-established history of voice is really important. I play with a lot of these tools a lot of the time, and I've loaded in a lot of my speeches and writing. And what that means is it's got 25 years and hundreds of thousands of words of me. And using that, it does a great me imitation. Like it really helps me get there, but it's not giving me anything new. And so for us as communicators, we are not off the hook on helping our clients develop the ideas that these tools can then help support and amplify.
Yeah. And you support, some of the biggest leaders in technology as an example, right? Who I'm sure must be asking you all the time, where are you using this? How are you using this? What are you hearing from them? Are you hearing execs want this, don't want this?
Want it. Absolutely. And sometimes the ways they want it is almost comical, like the fable of like, can John Henry outperform the steam engine? Like our team has literally had our material put in a bake-off with a company's AI tool. It said, here's your speech, here's the AI speech. Is this better? And by the way, it's a really useful warning, right? We have to be better. People who help people communicate have to be better. And it's not just better language, it's better ideas. So they want to know if we're using it. They want to see that what we are doing is AI plus, not AI instead of, and not AI alone.
And what are some of the tools you use to do that?
So without totally turning this into an advertisement. I am a huge adherent and proselytizer for Notebook LM, the Google tool, which allows you to create a sort of walled garden, small language model and load in everything you want to read, see, query. I'm a huge fan of creating gems for clients. And there are lots of tools that can kind of create an agent that mimics a client's voice or a leader's voice and what they're saying. So the Google tools are fantastic. The word on the street, and I kind of confirm it, I think is, Claude's a better writer. Perplexity gives you wonderful and more credible deep research. And so I love the tools. I'm always reminding the team they are tools. They are not an end unto themselves.
Well, look, really appreciate you coming on. I know this was a quick special edition, but I know many of our clients are asking about it. Many CCOs are asking about it. Clearly, many news outlets are asking about it as they all go quickly scramble to change their op-ed policies. So thanks for joining us on short notice today, Jeff, and appreciate it. And glad that an op-ed of all things brought us to an AI podcast.
Yeah, words matter. That brings me back to the very analog conclusion.
Well, we hope so too. I think all of our CCOs that have been on this pod so far would agree with us. Thanks very much.
Thanks.